All right, I'm going to show you how to work with your Cyanotype solution. It's a really nice, quick and easy process that's going to enable you to make prints from the large format negatives that we make from your digital files or your negative scans. So the first thing to know is that you need to not cross-contaminate these things. So I've got the eyedroppers labeled A and B, and also the solutions. It's a really easy mix. You just do equal parts of part A and part B. You don't want to get either one of them on your hands, but wearing just regular, disposable rubber gloves is fine. That enables you to, work pretty comfortably. So what you're going to need is a brush. Ideally it would be a brush with no metal, but as long as you just don't dip it all the way up to the metal, you're okay. You'll need a little something to mix your solution in. Just a clean glass jar is fine for that. And I would just keep your two eyedroppers in separate bottles. To get started, although I have supplied these chemicals to you in bottles with little squeeze tops, I find it's very hard to count the drops. They tend to come out all at once. So what I would recommend is actually taking those lids off, keep them separate, keep track of what lid goes to what, maybe just put them way apart from one another. And then, again, pay attention to who is who. This is solution A, so I'm going to use the solution A eyedropper. And the nice thing about these eyedroppers, they're actually for giving children medicine doses. And so they have measurements on them. Like you can maybe see in the video that I've loaded this up with half a teaspoon. We're going to want to mix that before we put it on the paper. So just using a small glass jar, an old discarded plastic film cassette container would work. So this has enough solution in it. Again, we don't want to cross-contaminate. We don't want to make a mess. So keep it in the same jar all the time. Don't interchange them. Maybe to keep things straight, put the lid back on. Now we'll use solution B, and we want to suck up exactly the same amount. So squeeze the thingy and pull it up right until the level reaches half a teaspoon, and lift it out of the liquid before fully letting up on the bulb, and you will have exactly what you need. Of course, now it wouldn't hurt, since you're keeping it clean. If you took a little too much, you could squirt the remainder back into the bottle until you had the amount you need. So now I can mix these. By the way, it's fine to do this in sort of subdued lighting. I'm working under fluorescent light here that's a little brighter than necessary just because of the, wanting to make the video easy to see. But, it's really, it takes a fair bit of light to really expose cyanotype. You do want to dry it in darkness, but coating it indoors away from a bright window is going to be fine. If you want your solution to go a little farther, get some distilled water and wet your brush a little bit beforehand. That way your brush won't soak up all that solution when you first put it in there. On the other hand, this is not an expensive chemical, and so you may want to experiment with kind of dry brush techniques or something like that. As far as paper, you can experiment with what types of paper work well. There are some papers made specifically for cyanotype that come pre-sized. I'm just experimenting with some Stonehenge that it was actually a leftover lithograph that someone threw away. And really anything fibrous works. So like cotton fabric, you could coat that. Wood, you could coat that. If you're really going for an even coating, you want to go one direction on your paper and then the other, so like top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom, left to right. But I think the beauty of this process is what you can do with the brush strokes. Don't oversaturate the paper. If you do, it's just going to run off and drip and make a mess. This stuff will stain your house, and it's kind of toxic. You don't need this dripping in your house. So keep it light. if you do have a heavier coating on there than you intended, just turn it over during the drying time, you know. So we're going to clip this to just a piece of string hung over some old newspaper so that if it does drip, it's not going to mess anything up. Just hang it from a clothespin and let it dry in darkness. You could lay it flat to dry as well. And then the other way you could do things if you wanted to when you're drying them is you could use a hair dryer to dry this. For now, I'm just going to set it back here and coat some more because I actually ended up using more, less solution than I thought. I'm going to try coating a page of the Thibodeau phone book, the page that has the map of my house on it. I have no idea what significance that may hold. This may or may not work because it's just about the cheapest paper you could possibly use, and you know, really thin materials can be tricky with cyanotype. My main advice with it is to consider it experimental and keep track of what you've done so that you can repeat results that came out really cool. But don't get your heart totally set on something, assuming it's going to work. You know, just say, would that work? I don't know. So, I don't know. So far, so good. We'll see. Now, this has to be developed in water, so I don't know how well that's going to go for this rather fragile paper. Another really cool thing about this is that you can make your own format. You know, you can make long, narrow pieces of paper and do combinations of negatives along them. And really, you can think about the brush strokes as a part of the artwork, remembering that your image is only going to print where there is cyanotype solution. There's no right or wrong way to apply this stuff. Let me tell you, half a teaspoon went a long way. I've still got solution left. Good thing I got more paper. How about a big piece of paper? The other way that you can coat a big area is to actually pour it out onto the paper and then spread it with the brush. Some people use a long glass rod called a puddle pusher to coat non-traditional surfaces like this, or like we call it non-silver sometimes, or alt process. There we go. You really shouldn't be trying to kick up the paper like I was just doing, but there was a hair and it was bugging me. Alright, I would just make your paper bigger than you need, alright, and don't coat right to the edge. You don't really want to touch this stuff when it's dry either. It's not good for you. So give yourself a handle, you know, give yourself a place to hold it. Alright. So once my paper's coated, I'm just going to get a clothespin and hang it on the line to dry here. There we go. Take down some stuff that was on here. I kind of like leaving it flat for a few minutes after coating so that liquid sort of settles into the paper and is a little bit less likely to go running off it when I hang it. If you have enough space, that's a good way to go. So that's that, and like I said, I could dry it with a hair dryer as long as I watch that I don't get the heat too crazy high. I've had reasonable luck with that in workshops where we're trying to sort of speed things along. But if I just shut out the lights and go to bed and get up in the morning to make cyanotypes, that's a great way to go too. You know, it's fine. You don't want to like try to store coated paper for days and days before you do it though. So you know, let it dry overnight and then have your printing session.